Second question, how is Kenmore's allowed to discharge a hazardous chemical into our drinking water supply? How is this legal? Well, Kenmore's is exploiting a loophole in their permit. They're gaming the system because they're powerful and they have an army of attorneys that are looking for ways to increase profits no matter the consequence for the rest of us. They chose not to tell downstream drinking water intakes that GenX was in the water. But don't confuse legality with morality. Don't forget that just because Kenmore's claims that their discharge of GenX is technically legal, that it is ethical, because it is not. DuPont and their spin-off Kenmore's have proven that morality and ethics do not guide their actions, rather they are motivated by profits. Yet another story of polluters over people, which brings my next question. Why didn't regulators protect us? Government regulation is supposed to be a check on corporate overreach. So did regulators drop the ball? Maybe. But let's dig a little deeper into this. In North Carolina, over the last 4 years, the General Assembly has cut funding to the Department of Environmental Quality by 40%. And right now, there are further funding cuts in front of the General Assembly that are going to be voted on soon. That means there's less money, less staff, less regional offices, and at the same time, there are new laws passed by industry boosters in Raleigh that make enforcement more difficult and shield industry. Kenmore's permit is expired. In fact, dozens of permits, if not hundreds of permits in North Carolina are expired. Cutting regulatory staff while a backlog of expired permits grows is reckless and backwards. The EPA is headed down the same path. There's been an outright attack on science at the national and state levels. And we as Americans, if we as Americans continue to allow science to be steamrolled by profit, we are going to have to lay in the bed we made. In light of significantly weaker national regulatory climate and a state regulatory agency that is recovering after 4 years of neglect, it's even more important that we regain local control. And one way that we've talked about recently doing that is through a strong special use permit. We need to make sure that we're putting control of our health in the hands of the people and not in the hands of polluters. Kenmore's announcement yesterday evening that they would voluntarily cease discharging GenX to the river is encouraging. But it also raises questions. Why stop a discharge if company officials assured the public was safe just as an EPA investigation was beginning? It included river sampling. If it was so easy to stop discharging GenX, why hadn't the company stopped long ago, especially in light of the 16 reports they filed under the Toxic Substance Control Act acknowledging the strong potential for significant impacts on human health related to GenX? What prevents Kenmore from deciding later that they will simply begin discharging again? What are the impacts of decades of dumping perfluorinated compounds, GenX and others, into our drinking water supply, and how will the company ensure us that our drinking water is safe now and in the future? Cape Fear River Watch takes this issue very seriously, and there's much work to be done. This issue is made more complex by the unknowns, but here is where we're going to start. We're going to push for a binding agreement that Kenmore's will not ever discharge GenX into our water supply again. We're going to push DEQ to add restrictions on the release of perfluorinated compounds like GenX in Kenmore's permit, which is currently up for review. We are going to urge the EPA to thoroughly investigate Kenmore's past discharges into the Cape Fear and hold the company accountable for any and all illegal activity. We are going to push the state to carefully study water quality and sediment in the river downstream of Kenmore's to ensure that our water is safe, and we will investigate opportunities for independent sampling to confirm the state's results. And finally, we are going to dig into the lack of transparency of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. In an effort to ensure that citizens will never again be kept in the dark about an issue as important as our drinking water. Last sentence. Remember your 4th grade science class. Our bodies are mostly water. Most of us here drink Cape Fear River water. Therefore, we are mostly Cape Fear River. If the river is in bad shape, we're in bad shape. If the river suffers, we suffer. So don't forget that.
We good? Yeah. All right. So I want to start with where we found this story at Star News. We had a reporter that was looking into another chemical that's already been mentioned tonight. Barry mentioned it. 1.4 dioxane. Something that Orlando's, who's sitting here, has beaten the drum on for quite a while. And so he was looking into that, and he got up with Detlef, and Detlef said, you might want to look into this other chemical, GenX. And everyone's eyes got wide, and we pursued the story. And then June 5th hit, and the story hit the front page, and that's when you and all of us found out about it. So, in the days immediately following after that, I think everyone was kind of in panic mode, from the news agencies to regulators to the state health department. Everyone's kind of scrambling to figure out what do we know, what do we not know. The answer is we don't know very much in almost every instance. And that's when that scramble over, we need to get Chemours here happened. And the county was pushing to get Chemours here, and there's some question about should it be an open meeting, should it be a closed meeting. There are all kinds of negotiations, and ended up with the pool reporter deal. I was the pool reporter, I was in the room. For the most part, it was a very civil, very cordial meeting. It was just like any other meeting we cover. A lot of people talk, you take notes, you write up a story at the end of it. The eye-opening part, for me, I think for a lot of people coming out of it, it was on the front page the day after, was the 1980 revelation. That was the thing that I don't think anyone heard before. That was the thing that, at that point, the tenor changed a little bit. And everyone sort of locked in. And I think there was I know Encore has published my notes in full online. I think they're available in a few other places. But there's an exchange there where Mayor Sappho basically goes, wait, 1980? You said what? And the Chemours village go, yeah, 1980. And so at that point, the meeting continued, and it became pretty clear at the end of it that the mayor and Commissioner Woody White wanted to push to get Chemours to stop discharging immediately. They were not willing to make the commitment at that time. As we now know, it took them 6 days to find somebody to do that. What we don't know is what that looks like. We've asked the questions a few times. How are you doing this? Why did it take this long? You know, you've been apparently discharging for 37 years, and yet when push for answers, it takes you 6 days. How does that work? Those questions have not been answered to this point. That brings me to my final point, which is that the overriding element of this story so far has been the unanswered questions. Usually as a reporter, we go to a thing. The circus is in town, or the circus is not in town. It's not that difficult to figure it out. This case, it's really difficult. Even the science that is out there is all different ways. On this panel tonight, we've heard 2 different times for how long C6 lasts in your body. And that's and that's no one's fault. That's just where we're at on this. It's very new. Everyone's trying to scramble to figure it out. I think that scramble was where the DHHS advisory level came in, which is a very, very soft advisory level. It's just like, I wouldn't, so I think that the unanswered questions and the broader issues this brings up about safety and the drinking water are really sort of where we're at. Kemp alluded to the feeding billions of the river. That's in your water. That sometimes gets processed out, sometimes doesn't. But there are questions about the water, we're trying to answer them. And that's all I got.
Hail, yeah, that worked. So, I am not a toxicologist. I'm just a pediatrician. I'm also not a river keeper or a water expert. And I have the same questions everybody else has. I don't know a lot about those things. I know a fair bit about kids. And so my piece of this is the question that people keep coming to me with, which is, well, would you let your kids keep drinking the water here? And that's a tough one because, as has been alluded to earlier, my practice serves a lot of kids whose families cannot afford to just start buying water. Many of them do anyway. By the way, in this case, some of my most vulnerable patients, who are my immigrants from Mexico and Latin America, are probably actually the best protected, because where they came from, you don't drink the water that comes out of the faucet. They always buy water. No matter what else, they're buying bottles of water, and in that case, this may have really protected that population. Of course, protected from what is still somewhat unclear right now. So what makes kids special? Well, the fact that they're growing and developing. That's why pediatrics is its own thing. When, as a pediatrician, I hear endocrine disruptor, I get a little anxious. Those words make me nervous. I don't know how much of an endocrine disruptor this particular chemical is, and it sounds like for the cocktail that Kemp referred to, even less is known. I do think that if I were pregnant right now, unfortunately, I've never been pregnant, but if I were, I would probably go out of my way to avoid the water until the situation is rectified. I join other panelists in being very pleased that our local political establishment seems to have been very activated by this issue. I think at a time where we have a hard time seeing people come together, this is a place where people are coming together, and I'm really excited about that. That is wonderful. I want to thank our local leaders for really providing a unified front on this issue. But then that begs the next question for me, which is, we got this one thing that we can name right here, and I'm really glad that everybody's coming together to we have a known potential danger to the community. Great, let's circle the wagons. But at the same time, we don't seem to be coming together over the wider need to protect children. Children are products of their environment. If we're thinking about air, they breathe more than we do. They breathe several more times every minute than we do, and that adds up. They drink more, they play more, they're more active. Things that deposit in their DNA and in their cells grow into more and more cells. So if you damage a kid's DNA, that damage propagates. People ask me, what am I doing? Well, up until today, I just haven't had a chance to get other waters on. But I'm an old guy, right? I mean, the stakes for me are a little bit lower. But the younger the child, the more concerning I find any contaminant, and specifically contaminants that have these potential effects on livers and kidneys and endocrine systems. So I guess when people ask, what do? I say, if you can, try and find a safer source of drinking water, and I'm hoping very much that our drinking water will be safer very soon if Kimor stands by the pledge that it apparently made. And at the same time, I would hope that we use this as a springboard to strengthen rather than weaken our environmental regulations and environmental monitoring. I know it matters. We can name this bear, but I think we should be on the lookout for bears in general, All right, thank you.
I told Frank that I was going to hit him if he didn't.
This mic problem. Can you hear me, or is it too loud? Okay. You deal with it?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get the big Q&A. And again, I'm going to recognize people in the audience with their hands up. Please state your name and who you would like to direct the question to. Okay? And I'll recognize the lady here in the back. Thank you.
My name is Melissa, and I'm also a scientist studying health.
Melissa, can you hold that to you? I'm sorry.
Yes. So I'm also a fellow scientist studying endocrine disruptors and their role in breast cancer, as well as in utero exposures. And I apologize for this not being so much a question, but I want to make the point that these chemicals are still produced because there is still a demand for them in several of our consumer products that we still choose to bring into our homes. So it's still these companies, and until these companies are accountable for remediating our water supply, there are steps that we can take at home to avoid any further exposure. And this would be mostly avoiding non-stick cooking items. Even when you boil this water in a non-stick pot, you're going to be adding PFCs to the food you're preparing, avoiding non-stick utensils, not buying water-resistant clothing for our kids. And I'll stop there, but there are other steps we can take right now to help avoid exposure.
Thank you. Please hold the mic closer than I'm holding this mic, okay? We obviously have some audio. Okay, this gentleman right here in front of me. Again, please state your name, and if you have a question, please direct it to one of our panelists.
Can I have 2 questions? Mark, can I have 2 questions?
Testing.
I have 2 questions, one for Dr. Brander and one for Attorney Green. Dr. Brander, I was just wondering in terms of the toxicology effects of the chemicals, what about bathing and what about washing our food? And then for Attorney Green, my question is related to the children in the schools. I'm sure they're all on city water. Is there any way that we can organize some sort of, I don't know, grassroots organization or something legally to be able to improve their water situation, even if it means purchasing water from them from the city? Thank you.
Thank you. The first question, bathing and washing our clothes. Suzanne?
All right, so to address the question about bathing and washing clothes, looking at the structure of the chemical, it is probably not an issue to bathe. You know, as long as you're not standing in the shower with your mouth open or anything like that, but it shouldn't be a problem to bathe in it because it's not, I would say it's not lipophilic enough. When I say lipophilic, it's not sort of fat-loving enough to be able to get through your skin. Washing your food could potentially be an issue. That's something that I've been on the fence about too, because we don't have an RO system in our house, and so I've been trucking it out to Tidal Creek or to Whole Foods to get water every couple of days. And that is something I'm thinking about beginning to do, about washing vegetables when I'm going to cook them in RO water rather than using tap water. But that's not as much of an issue as drinking it, I would say, if you're concerned about consuming the chemical.
Thank you, Mark. In terms of a grassroots organization, I can't imagine any reason why that shouldn't be done.
John, please hold that closer.
Sure. Is this better? Okay. I can't imagine any reason why a grassroots organization to provide an alternative water source for children in the schools wouldn't or shouldn't be done. I can't imagine an impediment to that, a legal impediment, in terms of potential damages in the future if we're asking the polluter to take responsibility. About everything that you can think of that could be affected by polluted water would be on the potential list of damages in the future. And I don't have great faith in the ability of any government regulatory body's ability to joust with DuPont, particularly in the face of tremendous budget cuts. I think the only way that this is going to be accomplished is for our citizens, probably through the various water boards that provide the water to our community, doing it through the legal system. That's the legal system. When a judge says, open your records and your books and show us what you knew about a particular chemical, in my experience, that's much more likely to be done than when a regulatory agency does it. I'm glad we have the regulatory agencies. But at the end of the day, when a judge with the power to hold people in contempt issues the order, or material can be discovered in the course of litigation, that's what usually changes the behavior. That's what changed the behavior in the Ohio River. And in all candor, that's probably why we've got GenX in New Hanover County, and Brunswick County, and Pemberton, because there had been so much litigation in the Ohio River Valley that it is reasonable to assume that anybody making a discharge in that area into the public waters would be doing so with great fear and trepidation, and it would be reasonable to assume the choice was made to do it somewhere else. Here we are.
Thank you, John. Just a yes or no, John. Do you recommend that our local Cape Fear Public Utility Authority take the lead on this if we're going to pursue legal action?
Well, I may have a different opinion than some people in the audience. When I evaluate that question, I'm looking at what is the most effective way to accomplish something in the legal system. And I respect the disagreement, but I think that the local public utilities authorities are the best potential plaintiff in any kind of lawsuit that would come to stop it, locate it, and clean it up.
Thank you. This lady right here. Let me give the mic to you, ma'am. Right there. Again, say your name and direct your question to a specific panelist. Thank you.
Can you walk to Harper?
My name is Kathleen Gallagher. I have not really questions specific to anybody because I think it's going to be used to some of you. I think it's going to be used to all you who don't notice and have provided this information. Okay? DuPont Fayetteville Works was one company up until not too long ago. Spun off the keyboards and spun off the Pureway America. They are dumping C8 today. Nobody has stopped them. My question is, who's going to take the lead on that? My second question is, it's not Pender, it's not Brunswick, it's not New Hanover, it's Sampson, it's Bladen counties. They don't know what we know, so they're behind the eight ball. Who's going to tell them?
I'll try to start on some of that. So the drinking water intakes below the facilities are primarily providing water for New Hanover County and Brunswick County and Pender County. To your point about Sampson County and a couple of the other counties there. The language in Kim Auer's press release is, I think, a little ambiguous too, but my take on it is that they have committed to not discharge from their secondary facility as well. They called it a waste stream. That is the loophole that they were using. They were discharging it appears that they were discharging from Pureway through their waste treatment system, and they appear in their press release to commit to ceasing all discharge of GenX altogether. Although I will say that that's not crystal clear to me, and I think it's worth getting some clarification on.
Let me add to that. I have reviewed a transcript of what Kim Auer's disclosed at the meeting last Thursday. And there are a couple of points to be made from that. Kim Auer thinks they know where it's coming from. It's not coming from their own discharge. They think it's coming from Pureway, as you say. That's Kuraray. And it's a byproduct of their own manufacturing process. And presumably it's a cocktail byproducts. Two more points. Number one, Chem Hours stated that that process was generating 19,000 gallons a day, which is not very much. They said that's 3 tanker trucks worth. They could truck that stuff away, and I think that's probably what they're doing. They think they know where exactly it's happening. The other thing that emerges, and I'm interpreting a little bit, so hopefully there's nobody taping this and hang me up in court. It appears that ChemWars and Curare do not have the capacity to quantify GenX or the other compounds in their effluent adequately. The technique that they referred to in that meeting is not adequate to do it. So they don't know exactly how much is in their effluent either, and they're not required in their permit to measure it. They should be.
I have a question here for Dr. Cahoon. You mentioned a cocktail. Will the DEQ, North Carolina Department of Environmental Regulation, when they're testing for GenX, will they also be testing some of these other potential toxins, chemical toxins? And will we be able to know where they're being charged from who and where they're being discharged into the river?
Two parts to that question. I don't work for DEQ, so I can't answer exactly how they're handling this. However, all you have to do is look at this paper to realize that there's some number of other compounds that need to be looked for. ChemWars claims that these other compounds are coming from upstream. So that proposition can be tested with appropriate sampling, and I understand DEQ is doing that. The analysis of these compounds is not simple, but when you get GenX, these other compounds show up. I'm not going to go into the technical details. The analytical method should get them all, should identify them and more or less quantify them. I say more or less, and again, that's technical, but we'll have a lot more information about the cocktail of compounds and where they're coming from. And as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure they're all coming from the same place.
Thank you, Larry. I have another question here from the audience, and I'll be back to the hands in a second. This is directed to Dr. Hill. Does the amount of GenX in our water supply correlate with New Hampshire County's high autism rate?
You know, that is a data-driven question, and there are no data available to answer that question. Certainly when we look at the known causes of autism, and many are still unknown, it's a condition that seems to start in the womb. It doesn't seem to be so much of a postnatal thing. Sabrina, there are some known genetic causes for autism, and more are being discovered regularly. Any chemical that serves as a potential endocrine disruptor certainly comes up on the list of suspects. But the science that would be needed to draw the conclusion that this particular chemical or even the cocktail contributed to autism in New Hampshire County, I'm afraid has not been done, and I don't know if it will ever be done, but it would be neat to stop the discharge first and then see if the autism rate goes down.
Lady in the back in the turquoise shirt or blue shirt? Yes, sir. I'm colorblind, but it's blue.
I got a teacher's mouth. I can do it with the retired teacher's mouth. I'm Beth Crawford, and in December I had to have surgery for parotid gland cancer, which is your salivary gland. This is very rare if they do not know the cause of it. On my street for the past 20-some, 30 years, I can name 2 breast cancers, 1 stage 4, and 2 people that have died of various cancers. I've also lost 3 dogs to cancers of the throat. Is there someone doing a database? You need a volunteer? I'm serious.
conversation with someone from the State Department of Health and Human Services, and the comment that I got back about the epidemiology, that is the frequency of these various things, was that they had not detected anything unusual in New Hanover County. I had trouble believing a lot of the other things I heard too.
Lady right here with the hand up. Yes, ma'am. Let me get a mic. Let me get the mic to you. Thank you.
Hi, this is for anybody dealing with, like the toxicologist and, well, the pediatrician league. What I'd like to know is, I have a 9-year-old who, over the last few years, has started developing health issues. And when this story broke, it was like, everything became clear. Where can we have blood drawn or have levels tested to find out if we have these toxins in our bodies? And also, what can we do to start detoxing from it besides stopping drinking the water?
Suzanne, you want to take a stab at that? Thank you.
I actually got this question a few days ago about how do we get this tested, and as it stands right now, there is no general test available to detect either presence, absence in the body, or to, say how many nanograms per milliliter do I have in my blood. There's not really a way to do that at this time, unfortunately. Maybe testing will become available at some point, but it's hard to say. It takes some time to develop. As far as how do I go about detoxing and getting this out of my body, unfortunately not a lot is known about GenX, and I realize I keep saying that and everybody keeps saying that. If you were to base what might happen with GenX in the body and compare that to what we do know about C8, we know that in humans, C8, so the chemical that was used previous to GenX, can hang around for 2 to 3 years, depending on the level of exposure. It's because of its chemical makeup, but that has not been determined. So you're probably, if you were going to compare it to C8, it might be a year or 2. And there's not really a good way to remove it. Like you said, the way to remove it is to stop drinking the water that contains GenX, and gradually you'll metabolize and excrete that chemical. I know that's not the best answer, but it's the only one I have.
Thank you, Suzanne. We're going to now introduce Robert Bocock, who's going to come up. Not yet. Sorry. Answers that we can't, questions that we can't answer. Again, we're going to chronicle these and put them on our website. And as we get answers, you'll be able to see it there. Okay. A lot of questions we can't answer. Right here, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I have 2 things. First thing I want to say is if you live near a Hispanic neighborhood or in a Hispanic neighborhood, there are little flyers that a group of us have made up and had translated to give some general information about the contamination and the steps they can take to protect themselves, and Facebook groups and the River Watch website that they can connect with to try to protect themselves and know what's going on. I feel like that is being really overlooked by CSPUA. They should be reaching out to us at our homes to let us know what's going on. The second thing is a question for Dr. Brander. You mentioned RO water. From the research I have read, I have not seen that there is a conclusive answer that this compound, or necessarily the other PFOA compounds, are removed by reverse osmosis. Can you speak to that?
You're correct that there is no water treatment that will remove everything from the water, including including PF compounds and all of the other micropollutants that we find in water. But from what I've read, and also this is something that is explained in the paper from the NAP lab at North Carolina State University, he states that a combination of using activated carbon and reverse osmosis is the best potential treatment that we have available that's actually, somewhat affordable. Of course, not by everyone, but by some, that will remove most of this compound. Something I have heard a little bit about is that if the system, if you have an RO system in your home and it's not maintained properly, that it can start to let some of these chemicals through. So the maintenance of these systems, my understanding is that is very important. It's something that you have to keep a close eye on. But if it's properly maintained, it should remove most, not all, but most of it.
Thank you, this gentleman right here with the black t-shirt.
Hi, I'm Nathan Woodward. I have a question about possibly moving towards a municipal RO system. Have you guys heard anything about that? What would be the environmental impacts of such a large-scale RO?
Would you repeat that, please?
Have you heard anything about moving towards a municipal reverse osmosis system, and what would be the environmental impacts of such a system?
Reverse osmosis is not cheap. It's getting cheaper than it used to be. I know that there's a big debate going on in Brunswick County about H2Go and their plans, and I'm not going to butt into the politics of that. There are a couple arguments that I'm hearing in favor of that. One is that the source water would not be Cape Fear River water. And as you've heard, reverse osmosis should do a pretty good job of getting rid of GenX, as they should be. I'm not aware that anyone has ever tested that explicitly. I have reviewed the literature a bit, and it looks like reverse osmosis should do the job. Okay. For a water supply system like the Cape Fear Public Utilities water supply system, that would be an order of magnitude larger than H2Go's plant, and correspondingly a lot more expensive. It's a very expensive treatment process. He said he was here to turn on. Okay. I think I'll stop there.
Right here, the gentleman in the yellow shirt. Mike? Coming up. Coming right behind you, Mike.
I'll hold it. I'll hold it. Just go ahead. Just take it.
I always think so all the time. My name is Michael Wolf, and I have a question that I don't know if anybody can answer up there. And that is, I called the Cape Fear Utility Authority the other day and asked them, I have an irrigation well that I use to water my lawn and my garden. So I know I have water in my yard, and I asked them, well, can I plumb this to use in my house? And they said no, because it's against the law because of what they call cross-contamination. So, being as how their water is contaminated, why can't I use my water that is in my ground that might not be as contaminated? Because King Moore's is nowhere near my yard, and I haven't been using city water to water my yard for years. And then I have one other little comment that I want to make, and that is that I've lived here for 24 years now, and I moved here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is well known as a polluted town because of all of the chemical plants that are all up and down the Mississippi River. But ironically, Baton Rouge has probably some of the very best drinking water in the entire world because it has a very, very deep artesian well that the water's billions of years old. So moved up here and thought that I was doing okay drinking the Cape Fear River water because the Sweeney water plant was supposed to be so good. And now this comes along. So,
Mike, let me answer that. Not as an expert, but this young lady here expressed concern about the fact that she wants answers and can't get them. If there was a public information event like this in front of the staff and board of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, do you think that would be a good exercise? I've heard someone suggest that there should be a hotline that you can call to the city or the county or Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. There should be Spanish translators at the authority to answer questions. I think it's perfect. Let's hope that happens. I know that Mr. Lawler, Councilman Lawler's resolution last night called for a public hearing with representatives from Chamorros in late July. Let's not wait for that. Let's ask our local leaders and appointed boards to step up and listen and receive questions from you, because we're not prepared to do that. And the authorities, I think, that are directly involved in our water purification should be here, not us. I want to introduce Robert Bocock and Mr. Bocock. Welcome to the southern part of heaven here in North Carolina. And you are in North California, is that correct? Okay, we're still working on that. What about the well lady in the back is there. Stand by 1 second to get enough mic to you.
Amanda, kind of piggybacking off his question, for those of us in New Hanover County that are actually on well water, does this affect the wells, the gasoline aquifer, and do you know about that for certain?
Question, everybody hear that? Is the water GenX affecting well water, our aquifer water, which is another source for our drinking water, primarily in the unincorporated parts of the county? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Adam, any research or information you come across?
I have not seen anything on that. I don't know if it's something that a lot of people look into. I've heard something about North Carolina, the company, the county said they're good to go, but I'm honestly not sure.
Well, I've got Adam, and we haven't been directing any questions at Adam. Adam, have you heard anything from the business community or the industrial community? One of the questions here on the internet, are they feeling the effect of the disclosure of the GenX in our river?
Again, really, we have not heard that much on that end. I know that WWAY did a story the other day about the tourism industry and what the potential impacts could be, but we have not had anyone reach out. The only people we've really heard from are places like Colligan, places that sell reverse osmosis water, and they're doing pretty well.
I can hear you, Chris Bell. It's the microphone from the room. I can't hear.
All right, let's just take a break and we'll be back, okay? Mr. Bocock, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there's a slight delay. If you would, you're here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I know you know that. We have about 370 citizens here asking questions of a panel of 6 that are professionally involved in our water quality and our public health. And my understanding that you are a water quality specialist and have worked with Aaron Brockovich on numerous issues. If you could just, in a few minutes, please introduce yourself, and we'd like to engage you in this Q&A. Thank you.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank thank you very much for asking me to attend. I think it's important that you get a larger scale perspective and answers to your questions that you may have about this particular chemical. I've been doing water treatment around the country for over 30 years now. I've responded to chemical spills across the country and am very familiar with treating emerging contaminants. I think that the problems associated with the GenX chemical in the watershed at Cape Fear, that is part of the source water issue with drinking water in the Wilmington and greater Wilmington area, I believe that I'll be able to answer your questions effectively. I've worked on groundwater cleanup for drinking water utilities across the country and have engaged myself in cost recovery for those drinking water utilities in excess of $1 billion over the last 30 years. We've treated chemicals that people at EPA are still calling emergent contaminants for the last 25 years. I'm very familiar with the chemical makeup of GenX as the predecessor chemical PFOA and PFOS, the PFC chains, the C8s, the C6s, as far as water treatment is concerned, behave in a very similar fashion. And I believe that there are treatment options, and there's got to be a very concise and consistent approach to how we advise the consumer who wants to protect their family from this chemical and give them advice that they can take home with them today, that's going to help them tomorrow, and that's going to help them into the future. This problem's not going away anytime soon, and it's about open, transparent information. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have of me concerning the chemical, the source water protection, the treatment plant options, the distribution and storage options, and then ultimately what happens in the consumer's home. Chemicals like this have a tendency to build up in the consumer's homes, in their hot water heater sludge. How do they deal with that? There are people in that room right now that have water filters on their refrigerators that have accumulated large quantities of this chemical, far greater than the 500 nanograms per liter that are found in the drinking water supply. They have GenX in their water filter refrigerators now in the milligrams per liter or parts per million levels. Because they are concentrating in that media that is in their water treatment systems in their refrigerators or their home water treatment systems. And advising them what they can do at home is as important as dealing with the problem at the water treatment plant as is dealing with the water all the way up to the source. And I just find the whole thing very interesting that an international conglomerate, chemical conglomerate, would report today that, they're going to go ahead and remove the source of discharge of this chemical, much like they're doing in other areas. We're just going to go ahead and fix it for you guys now because we're good guys. That frankly, that's criminal behavior. So, questions? I'm all yours, and I appreciate being on the panel. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us. Does anyone have a specific question for Mr. Bocock?
My question
One second, we'll be up next. Thank you.
My
Go
name
ahead.
is Ellie Klein, and I actually have a question that involves Mr. Bocock that possibly involves Attorney Green and possibly you, former mayor.
We're talking about Band-Aids and surgeries for stuff that's happened now. I have to digress a little bit and talk about the process. We as citizens are concerned about the lack of trust and accountability of the utility authority, and the concern that some of our elected officials who most of them like their participation on that board. My question is, what can we do to get someone like Mr. Bora, Attorney Green, or our riverkeeper on that utility board?
If I understand the question, I'll repeat it as I understand it, is how do you as citizens or consumers within the community and the non-governmental organizations, the Cape Fear Riverkeeper, get people elected to that board. That's called election time. And that's the appropriate time to address that. I think it's important. One of the things that if you do look at some of the successes Aaron and I have had recently, working with community groups, Corpus Christi, Texas, there was a change in the mayorship there. The mayor became very interested in water treatment. We've given them a number of ways to improve their treatment process. They've been very successful in doing that. They were on a 30-day do not drink order, not just a boil water order in Corpus Christi. And to your question, Hannibal, Missouri, some of the community activists did in fact run for city council and were successful in their election. And they put a referendum on their ballot there and actually banned the use of certain chemicals in their drinking water supply. So it's really up to you, members of the community, and it's what you do at election time. In order to digress, as you've chosen the phrase, to digress a little bit, I will tell you that in all communities we work with, there's always this question as to who knew what when. And while those are important questions that need to be answered for those of you that followed the indictments in Flint just last week, it's not so much a question about that when you're in this crisis mode. Let that be dissected later. Let's get the water safe for you to drink. Let's make sure that the Cape Fear Water Authority has the ability to pay for that. Make sure that the Cape Fear Water Authority has the ability to pay for that so that it's not borne by the consumer. But I think, I don't want to speak for the Water Authority. There are a lot of very technical pieces of information that I am not privileged to. But I think that my experience that I'm leaning on in this particular case comes from walking into communities across the country in these very, very crisis situations and actually making recommendations that work. I'm familiar with the Sweeney treatment plant diagram, how it operates. I think that our way can engage in treatment techniques that will eliminate the GenX almost immediately from the drinking water supply. I'm very concerned when I hear things like there's only one treatment opportunity, that being reverse osmosis. That's not always true. Reverse osmosis concentrates a waste stream that just becomes somebody else's problem. We need to get this chemical out of the drinking water, out of the environment, and destroy it forever. And reverse osmosis is not the way you do that. There are carbon absorption techniques. There's over 600 different types of granular activated carbon in commerce today in drinking water. 600 different types. And there are specialty carbons that will remove GenX. You have carbon filter beds today that have been allowed to go biological, almost exactly like the Charleston, West Virginia case where they had the MCHM chemical spill 3 years ago. They had biological filters there. When they changed those to the specific carbon that will remove this type of chemical, they immediately eliminated that chemical from the drinking water. So I think there are some immediate changes that can be made that would bring a lot of success to getting the water straightened out right away. So.
Thank you, Robert. And Emily, one second, just to clarify, our local public utility, water utility, Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, it is an independent board that was established 10 years ago in 2007 by the city and county. It's a 10-member board. 4 of the members have 2 elected officials from the city and 2 from the county. And the remaining 6 are appointed. And you can go online and check out their website and get a biography on the other 6. But I think it's important to know who serves and what technical skill and knowledge that they bring to the board to make these important decisions and address these challenges that we're facing. Emily?
Hi, my name is Rebecca Chernal, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Rebecca. Thank you for being with us today. You may have just answered the question I'm about to ask, but if ChemWater started right now using activated carbon to filtrate our water, how long would it take before our water is drinkable again?
How long would it take for the water to be drinkable or basically GenX free? It's dependent on a lot of factors. If we were able to secure the carbon, which I'm pretty confident that we're literally, this was unfolding literally at the same time as the American Water Works Association annual conference in Philadelphia, which I was attending last week. So I actually, on behalf of the community, went out and looked to see if I could find a good store of this carbon available for you. I think it is readily available. It can't be just any kind of carbon. It's got to be a certain mesh size for the filters that you have. And then it's got to be from a bituminous source, which is a specialty activated carbon out of West Virginia, coal mines. Carbon can be made out of wood, carbon can be made out of coconut husks, carbon can be made out of lignite. There's a whole bunch of media that you can make it out. They re-agglomerate, which is you grind it up and re-put it in pellets. There's a whole bunch of different ways. That's why I said there's 600 different types. Once we get that carbon in place in the filters, they're probably going to have to run for a couple of days before then the reservoir becomes GenX free. And then it's just a question of how large your distribution system is, where the storage reservoirs are located, and how we flush the contaminated water out of that distribution system. That can take anywhere from 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 weeks. And then once it's flushed out of all your community reservoirs, then we've got to identify your dead ends within your distribution system. There's going to be parts of the community that the water will actually sit in longer than all the other parts of the distribution system. We need to identify those and flush those out. The Cape Fear Water Authority has a hydraulic flow model available, and we can run some queries on that will identify how quickly we can do that and report that back to consumers. I think that's important that you be armed with information. Once that all clear is given to your particular neighborhood or community, then we will give instructions on how you flush your hot water heater system out. And how you change that filter on your refrigerator. You know, if you have any of the grid filter type things where you have the filters on your countertops, you're going to want to get rid of those. How many people know that there's a carbon filter in your coffee maker? Okay, you got to change that out too, otherwise that GenX will sit in that carbon. And what happens is GenX is coming in at by way of example, just so we can do the math, it comes in at 100 nanograms per liter. That accumulates and it accumulates and it accumulates. And that filter was created to basically take out chlorine, taste, and odor. And so what happens is when the GenX accumulates in those filters and it decides it doesn't want to be part of that filter matrix anymore, it will actually shed at extremely high concentrations. So you could go GenX for coffee Monday through Friday, and on Saturday, get a really big, heavy pot full. So you need to be able to be advised how to clean out your homes too.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Let's go back to the audience here. The lady in the back row, please. And Robert, stand by. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, a question, and please the record to one of our panelists. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Betty Bowrice. If Tim Morris has a permit that's up for renewal, I assume this is an NPDES permit, we have standing. How can we let the state, let DEQ and EPA know that we want those levels of all the chemicals to be at safe levels?
Thank you. Anyone over here? Gentleman right here. 1 second, we'll bring you a mic. I'm sorry, was there a comment? There was more of a statement. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll quickly try to answer that. So the permit is open. The permit is under review from what I understand, and I would say that there's going to be opportunity for citizens and groups like Cape Fear River Watch to make comments on that permit. I don't know right now what the details of that are. This is actually a fairly common thing for permits to be expired for fairly long periods of time in North Carolina. The company is allowed to operate under an expired permit as long as they have applied for a new permit, and that's the case here. But certainly stay tuned to Cape Fear River Watch's website and our newsletter and things like that for opportunities to weigh in here, because we're going to be looking for ways to do that.
Can I just reiterate, let's keep this to actual questions. We have some really great thinkers up here, and let's use our time wisely with questions. Thank you.
Mr. Balcock, quick question. When you compare reverse osmosis treatment to activated carbon. What's the cost differential between the two? It sounds like activated carbon can be readily obtained, probably readily installed, and we get an immediate solution. So what's the cost differential between those two modes of treatment?
The cost differential between granular activated carbon and reverse osmosis is orders of magnitude. I mean, it's significant. If your filters, which I believe they are, because they have gone biological, that tells me that they started with an activated media. Because you either have an anthracite media which has not been activated, and it's cold, and mechanically particles will settle out on top of it. And that doesn't usually go biological. In the process flow diagram, they're describing the filters as biological, so you would have had to have started out with an activated media filter substance that actually had the spaces in it to go biological. Okay, so I think you actually started probably with coconut shell carbon or lignite carbon so that it could actually go biological. And then you just allow it to go biological because it offers all kinds of benefits to removing organic carbon, which is naturally occurring contaminant pollution that's found in the watershed. So the chemical, GenX, goes right through that. If you remove that, you literally vacuum it out and replace it with GAC. If we did that for a number of years, you're looking at something on the neighborhood of about $4 per month or $4. Okay, increase in cost. And the reason that I say that is because they don't have the specific dimensions of your filters, the volume of media that's going to need to be in there. Because GenX is at such low concentrations, the media for GenX will last relatively long. The question is ultimately going to be how much organic carbon, how much naturally occurring material you have in the watershed, how long your carbon's going to last.
Can you repeat, you broke up for a little bit, can you repeat the actual cost one more time for us?
Yeah, the actual cost for granular activated carbon is going to be approximately $4 per month per family of 4 on average. That's an American Waterworks Association estimate for going to granular activated media. It'll probably be less than that because you already have the infrastructure. Your filters are already in there, and there's a component of capital expense in the $4 per acre foot. Since you already have the filters, it'll be less than the $4. Reverse osmosis is going to require you to re-engineer the entire treatment plant, put in a huge new facility that does a completely different set of science, and then it's going to create this huge waste stream that's going to require treatment. You're probably looking at as much as $25 to $30 per family of 4 per month if you go with reverse osmosis. And people need to understand, when you go to reverse osmosis, you make H2O, you make pure water. Then the utility is going to have to, basically they're going to have to go in and remineralize that water. Otherwise, you're going to get just like Flint, and that water's going to be so aggressive, it's going to eat your plumbing, and it's going to take all the iron and all the substances in your water out of your pipes and your plumbing system. You don't want to go there. Let's just start right there. I'm not going to mince words. You don't want to go there because it's dangerous water. I don't have all the particulars. I'm not going to make any promises. I'd like to get out there and look at those filters and start working with the water authority right away. But I will tell you that everything indicates to be probably be up and running and at least producing clean water probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks at the treatment plant. It's going to take another 4 to 6 weeks to get through your distribution system. Reverse osmosis, you're talking 3 years. And a lot of headaches and kind of cost you can't afford.
Great. That's a topic we're going to look into, and thank you so much for that information. Any back here? We have a question for our panelists, okay? We'll go, Mr. Bocock will be online for a few minutes. We'll get back to him in a second, okay?
Yeah, raise your hand if you have a question.
Question for our panelists?
These panelists right here.
This man right here. Stand by, Robert. Right down there. Thank you.
Mr. Bocock, I was wondering a couple of things. Have we ever determined whether GenX can get our food, since farmers do irrigate with river water, and we have new plants that are very much like new children, and the aeration possibility
lot of science questions in that brief question there. I will tell you that as far as aerosol and basically going from the water matrix into air, I don't have any understanding of the volatilization of this chemical. Looking at its chemical chain, I do not believe it is a volatile chemical, meaning it's not something that will evaporate and go into the air and become an air concern, but I could be wrong. I mean, I really don't. And looking at PFOA and PFOS, which is this is the replacement for, and it's just a carbon chain down with that extra oxygen molecule, I don't know. I will tell you I'm not sure how the bioaccumulation would take place in the plant species. Those are things that we can investigate. I don't have knowledge of that. And then ultimately, I will tell you that the one thing that you did touch on with swimming pools and you know, that air matrix thing and the chlorination of swimming pools. Well, we chlorinate our drinking water. It's a necessity. We need to disinfect it. We don't sterilize water, we disinfect water. And so when you put that oxidizing agent in, whether you use chlorine or chloramine or ozone or EPD, whatever disinfectant you choose to use, because there's that oxygen that they added in the middle of the chain, I'm not sure what disinfection byproducts are formed when you oxidize that oxygen molecule out. And I'm not sure how it breaks the chain, and I'm not sure if when it breaks the chain, it actually makes more dangerous chemicals. That's something that you know, super chemists are going to have to weigh in on, and I've already engaged some to ask those questions. When you chlorinate decaying grass, leaves, algae, moss, things that are found in our river systems, you form toxic, volatile organic compounds, trihalomethanes, just by the act of chlorinating it. So the act of chlorinating a contaminant like GenX, there's no science on it. So I'm asking really smart people, that ain't me, but we'll get you some of those answers. So they're great questions, but they're very complex and compounded.
Thank you, thank you. We have a related question and also comment that we wanted to bring to light. Dr. Brander, if you could.
Sure, and I will say up front that I'm a toxicologist and I do not have experience in water treatment, but I did have one question related to a statement that was made in the paper that basically brought this issue to light. The chemist at North Carolina State University did some measurements in the water and detected GenX, and this is what hit the news a couple of weeks ago here. And something that his group looked at was the relationship between these perfluorinated compounds' affinity for activated carbon and the replacement of these longer chain perfluorinated compounds with an ether group in the middle. And what he states here is that the replacement of a CF2 group with an ether oxygen decreases the affinity for activated carbon. And so my understanding is that if you use the right type of activated carbon, it makes a difference. So he was using powdered activated carbon in this study. Just to get clarification on what exactly that means for the effectiveness of an activated carbon filter. For something like GenX, which does have an ether group.
Right. I will tell you once again. There's chemists that are very specialized in each of these categories, and we don't want to pocket that elevated level. But I will tell you that the tests on the bituminous C400 coal-based material have yielded results. The GenX chain will actually, react with the granular activated carbon and be absorbed. It doesn't last as long as the CA chain, but it does absorb them. If you use a very similar material, which a lot of water treatment plants use, they actually, the coconut and the wood variety they do not absorb the C6 or the CA chain at all, or the GenX family of material. So they don't absorb those at all. But they found that the bituminous absorbs it to non-detect. There are studies that are taking place right now in Westmoreland on the Tennessee River in Alabama, down in the Decatur area, on the PFOS, and it literally, the coconut didn't work, the bituminous coal did. And I will tell you that the carbon folks have studied it for GenX. We'll go ahead and release that data. But I feel confident that the tests are 2 or 3 years old as well, because the manufacturer knew that they were going to deal with this today.
Okay. So it just depends on what type of carbon your filter is.
Yeah, this looks like the mesh size is about the size of what you would see in like a fish tank filter. It's a pretty good sized chunk of carbon. If you want the powder activated stuff looks like talcum powder, black talcum powder. That does not work at all. And whether it's a bituminous blend or a coconut blend, the powder activated does not work. It has to be this particular carbon. They've tested hundreds of different varieties. They've done long-term column tests. They were looking for breakthrough. Breakthrough is you basically stress the carbon column with as much of the chemical as you can possibly stress it with and try to make it fail to see how long it goes. And it literally, PFOA and PFOS lasted about 2 days longer than the GenX. So it works specifically on GenX. It will be successful, and it does depend on what you use and how you use it.
Okay, Robert, I want to move on. We've got about 15, 20 minutes left. A lot of people have their hands up. I want to try to recognize as many as I can. Please be succinct with your question directed at one of our panelists. And panelists, please, in turn, be succinct, okay? Thank you so much, Robert.
Yes, my name is Terry Espy, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Downtown Business Alliance. Harper contacted me last night. We have had numerous calls from the business owners in the downtown community. They're scared. We are not Flint, Michigan. This is a town where tourists are coming to. How honest do we have to be with the people that are calling us wanting to cancel the reservations at our Airbnbs? Not only that, we've got restaurateurs wanting to know what they need to be doing. Worse, even more so, what we tied with Denver, or Denver, the number of breweries. How about the beer making in the area? Do we have this chemical in the beer that's being distributed? So that's the business community. We're shaking. Thank you for dealing with this with a one-on-one from our home life, but we also need answers from the business standpoint.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards, on this comment. We appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Jen? Stand by 1 second, Jen, please. Mike, coming your way. And anyone over here? Jimmy, you're coming to stand next to me.
Mr. Doak, I have a question. No one in our community is advising us regarding whether or not to drink the water. No one is advising us what to do in our homes to keep ourselves safe. Can you please make some recommendations based on your extensive experience?
The best way that I can address that question is just straight up honesty. I would not drink water with a chemical in it that has absolutely this many unknowns at any level. People ask me this question all the time, and it's dealing with the Safe Drinking Water Act, and I heard the MPDS question earlier. That's the Clean Water Act. I will tell you, drinking water regulations and Clean Water Act regulations are in conflict in this country. It is illegal to flush in the toilet water that meets quality standards for you to drink. It's a quagmire of regulation out of sync with each other. So my recommendation would be I would not drink water with this chemical in it, with this many unknowns. As far as bathing and how to protect your family, I don't have the science on that. It's very similar to the PFOA and PFOS.
Robert, we had covered that before you came on, so we want to move on. But thank you in terms of bathing.
Thank you.
Stand by. Yes, sir.
Dr. Bocock, I was very intrigued by your comment that you will be able to give us very specific options on how to deal with this in our homes. I'm curious about the gravity filters that are out there, the Berkey and the ProPure. The Berkey, I know which we have, says in their literature and in their testing that they filter out PFOAs. Are you familiar with these filters, these gravity-fed filters, and whether they are effective?
Yes, I am, and I don't believe they do filter out PFOA, PFOS, or the GenX. I don't understand the mechanism that they're advertising that would be capable of accomplishing that. Short of a home water treatment system that engaged in reverse osmosis, or a home water treatment system that specifically had a carbon that was targeting these chemicals, I don't believe that there is a commercially available drinking water system that has been designed to specifically remove GenX to date. Unless you have one that has the carbon in it that's taking out PFOA and PFOS, which will work on GenX, anybody that's advertising that they'll take out GenX, I really want to see them prove it. If they're taking it out with RO, you're just basically concentrating it and putting it in the sewer system, and it's not going away.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Delphia Simmons. I am one of the co-founders of the Women's and Progressive Coalition. And I don't know a lot about carbon, I don't know a lot about filters, I don't know a lot about science words. I'll tell you what I do, I know math. There are 400 people in this room. There are 500,000 people who are affected by this water. And what I want to know from the panel and from the people in this room, how do we get the word out to 500,000 people? Because I'm going to tell you right now, a whole lot of these people don't have time to come to these kind of meetings, okay? They can't squeeze it in between jobs 1 and 2 or jobs 2 and 3, okay? Poor folk are going to die if we don't get these word out. And I want to know how we plan to do it.
Thank you. Want to take that question,
I'm going to try to answer a couple of questions here because Delphia's point is a good one. The most obvious way to get to drinking water users that I see right now is through the drinking water providers. But I want to just kind of quickly talk about what we're all experiencing here, which is a very complicated issue with very complicated explanations. This is not something that we're going to fix tonight in this room. This is not something that any one person has a real solid grasp on. What we're seeing right now is the results of undervaluing clean water for a long, long time in this community, in this country. And the chickens are coming home to roost now, and we need to remember this as we move forward from today. We're not going to solve this today. We're in a real jam here. And we need to, each and every one of us, remember where we are, and we need to remember this when we do things like talk to our elected officials about our priorities. We need to remember this when we make our personal consumer choices about how we impact water, and we all have a role to play here, and I don't want people to sit here and think that we're going to go out and buy a magic filter to fix this problem. We need to clean up our source water, and we need to start there. So just wanted to do that out.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that a little bit. I see Maggie sitting on the floor back there, and she and I had a conversation just last week where she noted that one of the things that to her has been kind of, and if I'm putting words in her mouth, feel free to tell me I'm wrong, what's been kind of heartening about this entire thing has been that you really see a community sort of undergoing kind of a crash, sort of high-level science course. This is complicated stuff. The entire story has been in the weeds. It's something that we're struggling with, that our editors are struggling with, that I know the TV stations are struggling with, that I think the public is struggling with, and that the elected officials are struggling with. And the commitment that we've made to it is that we're not going to let it go. So, it's been on the front page pretty much since we started covering the story. I think it's going to keep being there, just a hunch. But broader than that, I'm our environmental reporter. It's the first time we've had that job in 2 years. We have a lot of position shifts at Star News. When this happened, I went into my boss's office, I sat down and I said, how committed are you to this? How deep should I dig into this stuff? And she looked at me and she said, as long as you're here, as long as I'm here, you're going to have this job. So be committed to it. And yeah, that's all I got.
My name is Noelle.
Thank you.
Noelle Sanchon from Leland right now. We should all be angry. We should continue to be angry. We cannot let up. That's number one. My question really is, I think it's going to be unanswered, but I keep seeing discharging GenX in the water? First of all, they're wishy-washy and weak. They have to be concrete and demanding they stop. Number one. Number two, where is the order? That's my question. Where is the order that says you must stop discharging chemicals, every chemical, every PFOA, every PFOS, every unknown chemical that is still here? It's great that GenX is making us have this hype and this awareness, but where are the orders from the county, the local officials, even the state level, demanding discharge of these other chemicals to stop? Because it's not just GenX, it's a whole bunch. So it's not going to end with GenX, and it's not going to satisfy anybody here, or it should not.
And John Green, excuse me.
I don't think there is any such order.
And why not? We should all be asking why not. Yep.
I don't think there is any such order at the present time. I imagine some regulatory agencies could issue such an order, but we've talked about the difficulty of regulatory agencies jousting with a company that has a toxicology team and many employees who are dedicated to get frustrated with those orders. I think the best option for having such an order issued comes from the food court system.
Hello, my name is Chip Jackson. I'm a lifelong Hanover County resident. My comments are addressed to Dr. Calhoun, and I will let him correct me if I'm making misstatements. There was a question earlier about well water, and we in this room seem to think that if we're on wells, we're safe. And I think that by and large, we are, because of the fact that the river is actually the discharge from the aquifers. Think about it. It's the low point. It's where the water's coming out. So our wells should be safe. However, everybody's well is put in differently. They're routed differently. They're in different layers, different aquifers. So I don't think that we can wholesale say because we have well water that we're safe. And there is one area of this county that I'm concerned with, and Cape Fear Public Utility Authority has really done us a great disservice on many different levels. But they released a map that showed two colored areas. And the northeast part of the county was shown as a safer area because that water is drawn from deeper aquifers and not from the river. What they failed to disclose is the fact that during the wintertime, this water that's treated from the river is forced back into that aquifer and used in the summertime. So you people in the northeast part of the county may be getting river water. Is that correct?
With regard to storing water from the river in the aquifer, it's been discussed. You would have to ask the PUA about that, but it's a lot harder to force water into an aquifer than to get it out. And so I don't know if they're actually doing that, and if so, how much.
That's why they're blowing up people's submersible wells. And the utility has paid to replace them.
Okay, well, again, I think you have to ask the PUA because they're responsible for their well system and how they treat all that water or not.
Folks, we're going to take just two more questions, and we apologize. We have to exit at 8 or soon after. Again, we realize you have questions. Please document those, write them down, leave them with us before you leave. Again, Clean Cape Fear is our website. We're going to capture everything that's taken place here tonight, the questions you've asked, the answers you've heard, the questions that weren't answered. Thank you, Star News, and all the media, local media, for your help.
What can we learn from Flint, Michigan to combat what's happening in Wilmington, North Carolina?
I'm not familiar enough situation to comment on that. And I think there's a lot we can learn from the Ohio River Valley experience, the Parkersburg, West Virginia experience. That is a playbook for dealing with this situation.
Sorry, last question. Distilled water for home use right now gives through this in our households. Does that get rid of these chemicals? And the second question is, we live on a lot of seafood in your house affecting
Just to repeat the question, does distilled water offer a clean, safe alternative?
Just to clarify, are you talking about like a home distillation system, or are you talking about buying distilled water?
buying distilled water that is on local river water, southern water on Greenwood Street. It's a cheap source of clean water, if in fact it is the Atlantic Center.
Yeah, I would think distilled water should be fine. That's what I'm drinking. I have a laboratory, so my own. Distillation should work. This stuff does not have a high vapor pressure, so it should be carried over.
The second
Caesar Greenwood.
is the secret
Yeah. That's a really good question. His answer is, we don't know. It's something that the Netherlands, they're looking at right now too. That's one of their key areas of research over there. I don't know if anyone else knows any more about it than I do.
We know that GenX does not biodegrade and it sticks around in the environment a long time, and it can accumulate in sediments, which is kind of the base of the food chain. So I think, I don't know definitively about how it impacts seafood, but I think it's definitely something that we need to be taking a really close look at.
I'll just say, if it can accumulate in us, it can accumulate in seafood, and that issue definitely needs to be explored further.
Thank you, and thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Robert, for taking time. The River Watch is sponsoring this program. I want to encourage everyone, and obviously you will stay involved, stay interested, keep asking questions, organize in the community. We will post your city and county elected representatives. We will post the names of the board members that you can contact at this Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. Come to public meetings. We will post those dates again. Sign our sheet as you leave, our email sheet. We want to stay in touch with you, and we appreciate you coming to us. Emily?
Please make donations to Cape River Watch if you want these to keep going. If you really want this is valuable, make donations to make the fund more of them. Thank you.
Alan Craddock.
Thank you. If you have any post-program questions, just come on up and grab somebody. Thank you all.